The moment the gunshot thundered across the quiet daytime courtyard of Astor Corporate Plaza, the world slowed into a blur of dust, sunlight, and terror. Children froze mid-step, office workers gasped, and the pigeons scattered like torn paper in a sudden gust. And right in the center of that chaos, a man in a worn gray jacket threw himself forward with the desperate strength of someone who had nothing left to lose, hurling his body between a terrified young girl and the metallic flash of a weapon aimed at her. His feet scraped against the stone floor, his chest tightened, and before he even knew if he would survive, he whispered in his heart what he wished she would hear: "You're safe now." If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the courage that still exists in this world, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Heart of a Father to support more stories like this one. The man's name was Arlen Hayes, a 35-year-old single father whose life had become a storm he navigated on bare feet. The girl he saved was Mira Valorin, daughter of Celise Valorin, the formidable and widely respected CEO of Valorin Tech, a company whose name touched almost every device in the plaza that day. Their worlds were never meant to cross. But fate, cruel, strange, and sometimes incredibly tender, had spent years preparing the ground for the moment their destinies collided under that bright sky. Arlen had not always been a man struggling under the weight of life. In his early 20s, he had been steady, confident, and full of plans. But life changed the day his wife, Ilara, died shortly after giving birth to their son. The heartbreak broke something inside him so deeply that even years later he carried the fracture like a scar that wouldn't fade. Raising 4-year-old Riven alone while juggling odd jobs drained every ounce of strength he had, and still he woke up every morning determined to give his son a life that did not reflect the emptiness he felt inside. On the morning of the incident, Arlen had walked Riven to a small daycare downtown before starting his new temporary job as a maintenance helper at the Astor Plaza. The sun was warm but not harsh, the sky crisp, the sound of traffic calm enough that he felt a sliver of hope. He needed the money badly. Rent had risen again, and his hours had been cut the previous week. His hands trembled that morning as he tightened the laces on Riven's tiny shoes, pretending not to notice the loose threads on the boy's jacket he couldn't afford to replace yet, but Arlen never complained. He simply pressed a kiss to his son's forehead and promised, silently, that he would keep fighting. Across the city, Mira Valorin woke up with a different problem. At 11 years old, she lived surrounded by people yet deeply alone. Her mother, Celise, was one of the most powerful women in the tech world, but her schedule left Mira craving connection more than luxury. For weeks, Mira had begged to join the kids' nature workshop happening in the courtyard of Astor Plaza, arguing that she wanted to see life beyond formal events and private tutors. Celise had finally agreed that day, determined to start being more present in her daughter's life. She cleared her schedule and planned to surprise Mira later that afternoon. None of them knew danger was waiting. The man who raised the gun wasn't a random stranger, he was a furious former contractor blaming Valorin Tech for a failed project and financial ruin. He had been ranting for weeks online about justice, fairness, and how the world had wronged him. No one took him seriously until he stepped onto the sunlit plaza with shaking hands and a weapon hidden beneath his coat. Arlen first noticed something wrong when he saw a shadow moving strangely against the bright pavement. He turned, and for one terrifying moment, he saw the glint of metal aimed directly toward a small girl standing near the fountain. Mira, with her sketchbook open on her lap and her hair brushing her shoulders like threads of light. His instincts roared louder than fear, his body launched forward, his legs pushed off the ground harder than they had in years, and before Mira even understood what was happening, Arlen's arms wrapped around her as the gun fired, sending a violent shock through his body that he didn't have time to interpret. The security team tackled the shooter seconds later, but the world had already changed forever. Mira screamed, not from pain but shock, holding onto Arlen's arm like a lifeline. She didn't know him, but she felt the protective weight of his body shielding hers, the trembling breath he fought to steady, and the fierce sincerity in the way he had saved her without hesitation. The plaza staff rushed over, calling for medics, and in moments the place was flooded with panic, sirens, and frantic footsteps. Celise Valorin arrived like a storm breaking without warning. She pushed through the crowd as security parted for her, but when she saw her daughter curled beneath a stranger's protective arm, her breath collapsed. The woman who had controlled million-dollar negotiations with a calm voice felt her knees weaken. Mira ran to her, burying her face against her chest, sobbing that a man she didn't even know had saved her life. When Celise turned to Arlen, she saw not just a wounded man, but a father, someone carrying exhaustion and heartbreak behind his eyes, someone who would clearly risk everything for a child's safety, even one who wasn't his. The medics urged Arlen to lie down, but he shook his head, insisting he needed to pick up his son from daycare at noon. His voice cracked slightly when he said the word son, and something inside Celise softened so quickly it startled her. At the hospital, the truth became clear. The bullet had grazed Arlen's side, tearing through his jacket and skin but missing vital organs by mere inches. The doctors said he was unbelievably lucky, but Arlen didn't feel lucky. He felt scared that he wouldn't be able to return to work immediately, scared that missing wages meant missing meals, scared that his son would feel the consequences of his injury. When Celise learned this, her heart tightened. She had spent years solving big problems, global problems, technological problems, yet she had never met someone whose struggle felt so real, so undeserved, and so quietly painful. She saw in Arlen a strength she respected deeply. She offered financial support, a private recovery room, and even a top therapist for the trauma he might face. But Arlen, with humility etched in his expression, declined almost everything except the medical care he truly needed. He didn't want charity. He wanted dignity. He wanted to stand on his own feet and show his son what resilience looked like. Yet Celise wasn't a woman used to being told no. She found a respectful way around his boundaries by offering a temporary on-site role at Valorant Tech that paid twice what his maintenance job did. She framed it as a security-related assistance project, which wasn't entirely false, and convinced him that he had more than earned the opportunity. Arlen accepted, not for himself, but for Riven. As the days passed, something unexpected grew between the three of them. Mira visited Arlen often, bringing him drawings of the moment he saved her, scribbles of sunlight, a gray jacket, and two figures connected by something brighter than fear. Riven shyly began talking to Mira about his toy cars and his dreams of being a pilot. Celise would watch their children chat, her chest warming with a tenderness she had forgotten existed. Arlen, recovering slowly, found himself laughing more than he had in years. Watching Mira smile brought out a protective instinct he couldn't explain. Watching Celise soften around her daughter reminded him of the love he once believed in. And watching Riven grow more confident in this new environment made every struggle he had endured feel almost worth it. But life never changes smoothly. Word of the incident spread across the city, and suddenly reporters were digging into Arlen's past, his finances, his job history. Some tried painting him as a desperate man seeking attention. Others tried to twist the narrative for sensational headlines. Arlen became terrified that Riven would see something cruel online, or that his new job would be jeopardized. He considered quitting everything and disappearing again. Celise refused to let that happen. She released a public statement clarifying the truth, praising Arlen's bravery, and shutting down harmful speculation with a fierce precision only a mother trying to protect both children could possess. She made it clear that no narrative, not even one shaped by media, would erase what he had done. The city shifted its tone overnight. Arlen became a symbol of everyday heroism, not a target of gossip. The bond between their families deepened quietly after that. Mira grew calmer, lighter, her nightmares fading. Riven began running into Arlen's arms after work with more excitement than ever before. And Celise, who had once believed her daughter needed perfection more than presence, began leaving her office earlier each day just to sit with the three of them in the company garden, watching sunlight spill across their small but growing circle of connection. It wasn't romance, not yet. It was something more delicate: shared healing, shared gratitude, shared rediscovery of what mattered, and sometimes, that is the beginning of everything. As the story of Arlen and the Valorant spread, many people felt their hope rekindling, the kind of hope that comes from witnessing ordinary courage, selfless love, and the unexpected beauty that can rise from trauma. Their story reminded people that kindness exists, that second chances bloom even in broken soil, and that you never truly know how your single moment of bravery might change not just one life, but many.